a fastball clocked by United States Army equipment at 98.6 miles per hour, faster than anything hitters had ever faced. By almost every measure that baseball keeps, Bob Feller has every right to be considered the greatest pitcher of all time. Yet the man who broke record after record on the baseball field never once won a game in the World Series. Why did the strongest arm in history spend nearly 4 of its peak career years away from the field? Robert William Andrew Feller was born on the 3rd of November, 1918, in Van Meter, Iowa. From the moment he could walk, his father was rolling a ball across the floor toward him. By 4 years old, throwing a baseball was no longer a game in the Feller household. It was a daily assignment. 1931, the worst year of the Great Depression. Farms across the Midwest were failing. Feller's father cut down oak trees. He leveled part of his own cornfield, the very field meant to feed his family, and in its place, he built a baseball diamond. He called it Oakview Park. The field had a scoreboard and bleachers, and on Sunday afternoons, it drew more than 1,000 people, each paying 25 cents just to watch a boy pitch on his own father's farm. One of the players who stood in against young Feller at Oakview was a local kid named Niall Kinnick. According to William Feller's own handwritten records, by the summer of 1933, his son had struck out 361 batters in only 157 innings. This was not simply a father indulging his son's hobby. This was a farmer betting his own land, in the middle of an economic crisis, on the arm of a boy not yet a teenager. In the end, he was right to bet everything on it. In the summer of 1935, a Cleveland scout named Cy Slapnicka drove out to Iowa and signed Bob Feller to a contract. Feller was 16 years old at the time, still years away from finishing high school. Cleveland paid him $1 and a baseball signed by the entire roster. It remains one of the most lopsided transactions in the history of the sport. The signing did not go unquestioned. Commissioner Kennesaw Mountain Landis opened an investigation into whether Cleveland had broken the rules to get him, an inquiry that dragged on for 3 months and threatened to make Feller a free agent, worth as much as $100,000 on the open market. Landis ultimately fined Cleveland $7,500 and let the club keep him, largely because Feller and his father insisted, under oath, that they wanted to stay. Because professional baseball had rules against signing high school students, Feller's path to the majors skipped the usual minor league system entirely. That same summer, in an exhibition game against the St. Louis Cardinals, veteran star Frankie Frisch took one look at the teenager warming up and pulled himself from the lineup, telling a teammate he was not foolish enough to face that kind of speed in a game that meant nothing. In July of 1936, at 17 years old, Feller walked onto a professional league mound for the first time in an official game. On the 23rd of August, in his first official game, he struck out 15 St. Louis Browns batters. 3 weeks later, facing the Philadelphia Athletics, he set a record of 17 strikeouts, tying the modern major league record. He finished his rookie season and then had to do something almost absurd for a professional athlete. He went back to Van Meter High School to finish his senior year. His graduation ceremony that spring was broadcast live on national radio. By April of 1937, his face was on the cover of Time magazine. And then, a boy who had not yet earned his diploma was already a household name across the entire country. Between 1938 and 1941, Bob Feller did not just pitch well, he rewrote what people believed was possible. On the 2nd of October, 1938, in the final game of the season against Detroit, he struck out 18 batters, a modern major league record for a 9-inning game that stood for decades. Then came the 16th of April, 1940, opening day, Comiskey Park, Chicago. Feller's parents and his sister sat in a crowd of only 14,000 people, bundled against a cold wind, and watched their son throw a no-hitter against the Chicago White Sox. To this day, it remains the only opening day no-hitter in the history of Major League Baseball. That same season, he led the league in wins, earned run average, and strikeouts, a rare pitching triple crown, at 21 years old. But greatness did not make him easy to manage. That same year, Feller and a group of teammates walked into the Cleveland front office and demanded that manager Oscar Witt be removed, accusing him of humiliating players in public. Newspapers mocked the entire roster as the Cleveland Crybabies. Detroit edged Cleveland for the pennant by a single game, and in the deciding contest, The Tigers beat Feller not with one of their aces, but with a little-known pitcher named Floyd Giebel, which made the loss sting even more. By the end of the 1941 season, he had led all of baseball with 25 wins. He had passed the 100-win mark for his career, a total almost no pitcher his age had ever reached. Ted Williams, the finest hitter Feller ever faced, later said that against most pitchers he began preparing the night before a game, but against Feller, he needed 3 days. Williams called him simply the fastest and best pitcher he ever saw in his career. He was 22 years old, already being called the finest arm the game had ever produced, and preparing to sign a contract that would make him one of the highest-paid athletes in America. Everything was pointed toward more records, more glory, more history. Then, a Sunday morning in December changed the direction of his entire life. The 7th of December, 1941. Bob Feller was driving through the Quad Cities on his way to Chicago to finalize that record contract when a news bulletin interrupted the program on his car radio. Japan had attacked Pearl Harbor. He did not turn the car around and drive home. He kept driving toward Chicago. But the contract he had been planning to sign no longer mattered to him. Under the rules at the time, Feller qualified for a military exemption. His father, William, was suffering from brain cancer back in Iowa, and Feller was the family's main financial support. Nobody would have questioned him for staying home and continuing his career. 2 days later, on the 9th of December, he walked into a recruiting office and enlisted in the United States Navy. He became the first professional athlete in America to volunteer for service after Pearl Harbor. He did not ask for a comfortable assignment. Naval officials wanted to keep their most famous new recruit safely away from danger, training other men in physical fitness. Feller pushed back. He later explained that he did not want to spend the war handing out bats and gloves and turning coral reefs into makeshift ball fields for the troops. He wanted to fight. He applied for gunnery school and was assigned as a gun captain on the battleship Alabama, responsible for a crew manning an anti-aircraft gun. Think about that for a moment. A man whose right arm was worth more money than most Americans would earn in a lifetime chose to stand on an open deck, exposed to enemy aircraft, because he believed that was where he was needed. If you had been in his position, 23 years old, on the edge of the richest contract of his career, would you have made the same choice? Tell us below, because this story does not get easier from here. Early January 1943. Feller was stationed at Norfolk, preparing for deployment, when word reached him from home. His father, William, the man who had leveled his own cornfield to build a baseball diamond, had passed away. The Navy granted him 10 days of emergency leave. 5 days after his father's funeral, following what he understood to be William's final wish, Bob Feller married Virginia Winther, a young woman he had met during spring training 2 years earlier. There was no time for a long honeymoon. Within days, he was back aboard the battleship Alabama, headed first for the Atlantic and soon after, the Pacific. What followed was more than a year of direct combat. The Alabama escorted aircraft carriers and shelled enemy positions through the Gilbert Islands, the Marshall Islands, and the Battle of the Philippine Sea, one of the largest naval engagements of the entire war. Feller later called those 13 hours in the Philippine Sea the most intense of his life, adding that afterward, the pressure of pitching in Yankee Stadium felt almost small by comparison. He kept his throwing arm alive the only way he could, tossing baseballs off the deck and into the open ocean between watches. Not every man who served beside him made it home. Decades later, when people called Bob Feller a hero for what he did aboard that battleship, he consistently refused the label. In one of the most quoted lines of his life, he said, "I was only a gun captain on the battleship Alabama for 34 months. People have called me a hero for that, but I will tell you this. Heroes do not come home. Survivors come home." He meant it as a tribute to the men who never made it back, not as false modesty. For Feller, the word hero belonged to someone else entirely. He was discharged in August of 1945 and returned to the Cleveland Indians 2 days later. Nearly 4 years had passed since he last pitched in a major league uniform, years that were, by nearly every account, the prime of his career. If a family member of yours ever served far from home during wartime, share their story in the comments. Stories like this only mean something when we remember the people who lived them, not just the record books. Nobody expected a pitcher who had been gone for nearly 4 years to come back better than ever. Bob Feller did exactly that. In 1946, he had the finest season of his career, 26 wins, an earned run average of 2.18, and 348 strikeouts, a modern major league record that stood for 27 years. On the 30th of April, he threw the second no-hitter of his career at Yankee Stadium against Joe DiMaggio and the New York Yankees. Afterward, DiMaggio himself told reporters that anybody who had the stuff Feller showed that day deserved a no-hitter. But what Feller did that same year off the field mattered just as much. That fall, he organized a barnstorming tour unlike anything baseball had seen, flying his own team of major league stars from city to city to face a squad of Negro League legends led by Satchel Paige. Over nearly a month, the two teams played more than 30 games in front of hundreds of thousands of fans. It was one of the clearest public demonstrations, right before Jackie Robinson broke the color line, that Negro League talent belonged on the same field as the best players in the major leagues. Feller and Paige became close friends through those tours, and 2 years later, Feller supported team owner Bill Veek's decision to sign Paige to the Cleveland roster. Feller was not finished changing the sport. In 1954, players elected him as the very first president of what became the Major League Baseball Players Association, a role he held for 5 years. He helped lay the groundwork for the modern players' pension system, arguing publicly that individual ball players, no matter how talented, had almost no bargaining power against team owners on their own. In a television interview years later, asked how a man as successful as he could complain about how players were treated, Feller answered simply that the structure itself was wrong, regardless of how much any one player earned. A farm boy from Iowa had returned from war to set a strikeout record, throw a no-hitter against the Yankees, help open the door for Negro League players, and found the union that still represents every major league player today. Did you know Bob Feller helped start the Players Union before he became known for anything else off the field? Let us know in the comments if that surprises you as much as it surprised us. 1948. Cleveland finally reached the World Series, and Bob Feller finally had his chance. Game 1, Braves Field, Boston. Feller was locked in one of the finest pitching duels of his career against Johnny Sain, allowing only 2 hits through 7 scoreless innings. In the bottom of the 8th, with the score still tied at 0, Feller spun and fired a perfect pickoff throw to second base, catching pinch runner Phil Massey cleanly off the bag. Umpire Bill Stewart called him safe. Photographs from that afternoon would later show the tag arriving before Massey's foot returned to the base. Moments later, Massey scored the only run of the game on a single, and Cleveland lost 1-0. Feller started again in Game 5 and was hit hard, taking his second loss of the series. Cleveland still won the championship in 6 games, and Feller received a ring along with his teammates. But he never won a single game himself. Decades afterward, when Phil Massey passed away, papers connected to his estate confirmed what the photographs had already suggested. He really had been out at second base that day. The only World Series chance of Bob Feller's career had been decided by a call that was simply wrong. There would be one more difficult twist. In 1954, Cleveland won an American League record 111 games and returned to the World Series. Feller, now 35, had gone 13-3 that season. Manager Al Lopez never called his number, not for a single inning. Cleveland was swept in 4 games, and the pitcher with 266 career wins watched the entire series from the dugout. 2 chances at a personal World Series victory. 2 doors closed, one by a blown call, one by a decision that was never fully explained. Do you think that missed pickoff call in 1948 was an honest mistake, or something else entirely? Cast your vote in the comments, because baseball historians still argue about it today. There was no scandal, no collapse, no dark secret hiding behind the statistics. What happened to Bob Feller is that a farm boy from Iowa built the fastest arm of his generation and then spent that arm on things he believed mattered more than personal glory. He gave up nearly 4 prime years to a war he did not have to fight. He married under the shadow of his own father's funeral. He helped prove that Negro League players belonged in the major leagues, then helped build the union that protects players to this day. And the one prize that should have crowned all of it, a personal World Series win, was taken from him by an umpire's mistake he could never undo. 266 wins, 3 no-hitters, 0 World Series victories of his own. That imbalance is not a tragedy, it is the whole point. Bob Feller passed away in Cleveland in December of 2010 at 92 years old, remembered less for what he collected than for what he was willing to give away. If this story moved you, leave a comment about the moment that hit hardest. Give this video a like if you believe some victories matter more than any scoreboard. Share it with someone who loves baseball history.